is a fairly simple game I played a few years ago. It shows the danger of having less space in closed positions, and also shows the danger of leaving the king in the center when there's a lot of pieces still on the board. This is one of the main lines of the French defense so far. Usually black here exchanges on d4 and then plays f6, trying to get the pieces out. But my opponent here decided to kind of keep things slow and just develop behind the pawn chain. So he played a5. The goal of bishop g5 is to exchange the bad bishop, because all my pawns are placed in the dark squares, at least all my pawns in the center, and also hopefully if black takes on g5, then I'll be able to play knight g5 and maybe attack a pawn on h7 with a tempo or something like that. So it seemed like a reasonable move. b6 is probably a mistake because this move does not achieve its goal, the exchange of the light squared bishops, and also now the king is the black queen is having is going to have a hard time coming back into the game, because now it's completely shut off from the rest of the board on a5, and we'll see how this will be very important, because as soon as white starts any action in the center, it's going to be really hard for the black queen to come back and defend the black king. So black continues to stick to the risky strategy of keeping his king in the center and just advancing pawns on both flanks. But a move like this, h5, it just creates more weaknesses, and now I'm gonna put the knight on g5, and it's gonna be even harder for black to get rid of that knight, because he can't play h6 anymore. So now already black is facing a tough choice. If he castles, then probably knight h5 with a piece sacrifice is going to completely destroy black's position. At the same time, if he plays something like rook f8, then he can't castle anymore, and the rook on f8 is probably pretty vulnerable too. So black chose something else, but that didn't really help much, and in the end the pawns still become too weak, and in a way all the black pawns are placed in the light squares, but all the white pieces are just coming in on the dark squares like g5 and then possibly invading to f6. So in a way this position illustrates the idea of David Bronstein that the weakness of the dark squares is also the weakness of the light squares, because the opponent's pieces will come on the dark squares and they will attack all your pawns that are placed on the light squares, and then your pieces and pawns won't have any set of squares to hide on. So the attack against f7 is already causing great grief for black. So black's pawn structure has been compromised, and he has a weak pawn on h5, which I probably could take, but it would just distract me from some more important goals that I could set on this position. So for a while I was trying to calculate what happens if I just take on f5 with a knight. Then I'd be hitting f7 and d7, and it just seemed really dangerous for black. But after a bit of thought I realized that there's no need to calculate or see too far ahead, because black is just unable to do anything in this position. He can't castle long because then f7 falls. He's not threatening to bring back the queen into the game, because that takes several moves. So and the sacrifice on f5 isn't going to run away. So I just played a useful move that would make that knight f5 sacrifice even stronger. So here black already really has no good solution. He could have tried to take on d4 and then maybe bring the queen to d2, but in the end I can just probably ignore most of those threats and just sacrifice on f5 anyway, which isn't really a sacrifice. Black almost has to take on f5 because otherwise the knight would come to d6 and cause even more damage. Black's position is completely collapsing. He has to somehow protect f7, and to do that he has to basically drop a rook. I could have taken on h7, but there's no reason to do that because with the rook already on e1 I can just go directly for the king, and this doesn't give black time to escape with long castle, and he's basically just getting checkmated right away, so black resigned. This game shows that you really can't neglect development and keep your king in the center and just push pawns at both flanks, hoping that the close nature of the position would, rescue your strategy. And it's just counterplay has to come at some point. Maybe black was delaying taking on d4 for too long. Maybe he had to play something on the c file, but all the time went into pushing the pawns to a4 and to h5, and there was no time left for development, so he had to pay a pretty high price for that.